I'm going to read some poems first of all from this book called Homage to Braque, which is, came out really simultaneously with that one, 1922 Earth Race, quite recently. This book is has throughout it quotations from the writings of the great French painter Georges Braque. And I thought I'd start off by reading a couple of those that I think might give you an idea of where my action is. Braque wrote this: "You must always have two ideas, one to destroy the other. The painting is finished when the concept is obliterated. It is unnecessary to imitate what one wishes to create." And having said that, read that out, I'll read a poem called The Painters. And some of you might recognize that, in fact, some of the materials are talking about another French painter called Matisse and an American painter called Gorky, who changed his name. You'll see that the names are given, and twice he decided to change his name. The Painters. "I touched her body, my hands enveloped her form, I transmitted into earth the equivalent of my sensation. Antaeus touches earth again, roots spring into his tread, clay not too greasy, a bit sandy, hands contact. Line imprints of palms, a dance foot hard on earth, soil indented, print of bronze and fruits, large seated nude, right foot buried, hypertrophied to earth, feet underground, head a tree to the air, Katya, a plane tree, four backs put flesh to bark, embarkation for Antaeus' joy. The spine where it radiates, access earth to sky, the rod mountain, wild gravity changed to songs of just above the skull, active weight and hand marks, to prevent a man from kisses on clay lips, thumbprints show touch all over. Vozdanik Adoyan chose garden in Sochi, chose his name, Arshal Gorky, not Archie Green. Gardens of loquacity, a pageant of viscera and organs. Flowers and holes flow out across their field, inside weeds evoke ribs, pudenda, and African shields. The world of the happy, quite another than this unhappy. From mouths and horns, thin jets fall back, arcs, to thread ever-silent pools, to form surprise tanks of controlled waterfall. Break mirrors, break their sky, whole patterns on the world, profound hydraulics at each crossroad, and village jets. Sounds of mother of pearl, mint flutes, teak floors, the dragon paper screens. Inside a conch, time. Across stretched skin, a stroke of prints. Pine cone finials. Chinese wisteria from teak pagoda. Falls into cool mist, white and lavender. From cockle hinge arises horns of milk. Thrusts from radial lotus. Lime arbor, bent or pleached where I tripped. Out of squares, lattice, through decrease, magic knots of number in the world. Neither necessity nor will, but accomplishment. Tobacco flowers fill night from borders. A cloud, then into our lungs, out to the stable cricket. Harsh legs in warm night. And death on the world of the happy or unhappy. It does not change, it ceases to tilt and slide, ceases, flows, and flexible boundary ceases. She stays half laurel, half girl, who rustled avenues of clashing tulips. From she-ass and stallion juts the bardot. Rainforest begins again, uses everything. This next poem is dedicated to a marvelous American poet called Philip Whalen. It has no title. just called For Philip Whalen. And it uses a couple of quotations, and it also mentions marvellous work by the Austrian composer Webern, Variations, For Philip Whalen. Pleasure of flat meadows by sea, level alluvial buttercup waterfields, river grass, sunken marguerites, plain from hedge to hedge, edged for the eye to move, to leap on, reach over, level sky without cloud measure, at the word RAS, cigarette cards inside, yards of swapping boys. No, my firm persuasion, order, a scholar, artist to play, you know themes are there, heard and felt with your fingers, not to be arranged or stressed, no thumb bruises on Herb Robert, but BACH launches you on some bold understanding. Variations, Opus 31. And trees do not have to grimace when a character comes on stage. Living at the edge of a black hole could be rewarding. Your black hole strapped to your back for speed in this universe. Clouds blow through the mountains, clouds blow off the mountains, clouds blow on the mountains, clouds blow over the mountains, clouds blow into the mountains break the clouds, the mountains resist the clouds, the mountains reform the clouds, the mountains moulder the clouds, the mountains open and embrace the clouds, clefts and pinnacles, sharp mist rattle at night, tambourine bird, a wind invader, calm as planned, tears the house apart. Does light come in between debris? Soap people sold him finally. He imitates himself until he dies. A seed mask of despair planted by the rich, who need repetition, need low hedges, encircle neat beds, replanting same velvet blue leaves, leaf mold reinforced, no plant reborn in one place, blue lawns under a frame moon, lanes of dazzled trumpets of haute couture, wave hot under triple glass, the deep odor of spoils, songs in praise of gods and heroes, lament walks, hung with vinous cones, inverted purple flowers, wisteria breaks over brick and sinew bark, muscles of a ship, through earth floated movements, sterile craters of Verdun join holes in Okinawa, defoliated pits of Vietnam's slush and burnt fields of the Miao, abandoned to plains of America. The child, like the poet, is his own instrument. Flowers medicinal in virtue change my mind. Pleasure of moss, surprise of yellow, white, purple crocus. Dark lilies, white beyond flare of squeaking clatter. Hollow tulips change my mind. Discoveries after roots of vegetables are pulled. Bugs on shrubs, intentionally placed by living fingers. Other decorum and respect for space relations out of nothing at all. A house and a garden, the commonest materials, the tin air in Pahang. They burn bush and move in, move on to burning, the falling trunk slow into undergrowth, ash into mold, soil thick from skin, leaf, snake bone, never the eye full of a peony, a carved head devouring the eye. Hands have red garden, pink crisps on that stem above weed babble, language of onward dirt. Last in this book, I know some of you have heard me read thought it was written for a very special occasion, that is the celebrations in London of the death of Pablo Neruda. And it uses details from the great man's life. The man I particularly admired because he combined a political life with a poetic life. It's called Underground, a passage in Neruda. From guitars of water and sunlight, sharp smells of lemon memory, he moves in with miners, passes from house to house, at night from country to country, across mountains, to Mexico by flight, to Paris, dark in the home of the earth, at each point dark in flight, through our memory of sharp cries of great crustaceans, move enjoying barnacle plates, from sleep of sea to dreams of land, flight to underground. Remember long dream of mining light. Daydreams and sleeping dreams recuperate our days and nights. We go down and across country. Beaver Indians make medicine flight. In dream, each man creates. No political structure, each man is authority. For health, marriage, hunting, his magic is his own in common. Dreams to discover magic combats. They have no wars in their hard northwestern forests. His poems changed his life. His flight moved back to his land of magic and poems. But now he lived off the coast, a black island, to have his own sharp memory, whittled in changing measures, exchanged gifts. But what have I to give? 4. Non quiero cambiar de planeta, porque para explicar mis problemas, le hablaré de geografía. I have no will to change planets. When I try to explain my problems, I shall speak of geography. Your flow of dreams, of radiance, and affection light swans across wild gardens. High in mountains, in sea cliffs, your combat against America. Fire-struck complex in dark memory, where a girl steps across marigolds, bringing spring and darkness in her arms. In this country, this is fading sight. We wander to touch hard a wild bee. The master is he whom one may approach without prostituting himself. It is because in the master's work all things go back into the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lovely.
This is a young American poet called Kirby Malone, who's over here. Did a very good year's work and ended up by depositing this with us. And I think Alan is the person who's responsible for selling the copies. And I had the very good luck to have 3 poems in here. And I'm going to read all 3 of them. And there's a little story I want to tell about the first one. I'm very keen, as Jeff knows, and a lot of friends of mine know, that we think of our poetry as English poetry as part of international poetry. The Poetry Society Manifesto is coming out stretches that Jeff has written. I feel very strongly about this, and particularly in connection with Latin American poetry, which has been a tremendous effect on my life. But then I was in Salzburg recently, and I met the literary editor of the New Hungarian Quarterly, a man called Miklos Vajdar, and he put me in, to my shame, he put me in contact with a poet I'd never read called Ferenc Juhász, great Hungarian poet. And I read this great poem called The Boy Changed into a Stag Clamours at the Gate of Secrets. Then I realized that something I'd admired for many years with Bartok's Cantata Profana, it was the same story about the boy or the man changed into a stag and therefore unable to go home. Had a great effect on me. And he couldn't get the horns through the door. And I thought, yes, I know what that means, all right. So I wrote these, one poem is called Homage to Ferenc Juhász, which is my own take on the myth. It doesn't borrow in any sense from him, but I just felt I wanted to say that and dedicate it to Miklos Vajdar. And the other poem is from a set of elegies I've been writing. This one is called Bela Bartok, and they're related. I'll say something about the Bartok when I get them. Okay. There's a kind of dialogue in the middle, so if my voice starts to change a little, that's the idea. Homage to Ferenc Juhász for Miklos Vajdar. In the call to home, her voice encircles each bowl. Into his world, the years of lives to come, his homed voice hangs in the branch-swayed, leaf-rustled air, the gate of secrets. Cantata Profana of the sun stag, light-hung antlers, star hairs, eyes of knowledge and a mask of deer. Coils of head antennae reach into distant forest circuits. Home cried out to be bride, roiled in a clearing to be generate, needing the stag back as a returning boy of her past, as if she centralized the wild geese, the shining potato flower, reed-fingered fish in rings of forest water, smell of blood in her spells. She tries to quieten silent sounds of creatures she does not need. Her son must return, but it is he who gathers forest to a distant point, shining with atom's depth. She cries, "My own!" A spiral scream rose out through nighter caves, pits of ore his hooves guard. She cries, "Your fountainhead!" He lowers his branch-crowned head to forest surface, sees fish beneath the mouthed surface. She cries, "Flesh, tough as shell! Come, control them with your knife again. Afford images of revolt for their screen. Breathe their life and call it revolt some future." Her calcium knuckles, cocks crowing in sodium city dawn. She cries, "Your own mother!" Eyes without face, stone apples, the Gorgon Hesperides of Tangier. "Breathe," she howls, "into things your life again." The boy tossed his head, nostrils valves in his flickering muzzle. At her false hunter's cackling of twigs, underfoot bracken in early spring. He stares at fur in moonlit water, his penis a tassel. The urge to paw hard earth, bellow into hoar breath, slow form before his huge eyes in the clearing, and above moon foam he masks expression. Somehow she hears a language. I cannot return. Spring is more marvelous than ever. I would rip father from grave. You, mother, would open to gate of stars. Your own son's tramp of hoof horn. Antlers of fire fill the night cloud sky. A tree of bone out of his plotting head. I would smash your wall, your well, your flower beds to burial grounds. Scatter father's laid bones, your cooking to a mess in shards. She pours wine, tears, weeds, shrieks over fat, strokes feathers on ebony, airs his mattress on a sunny sill. His language of refusals remembers milk loaf, flowered glass, donuts. But the dew-struck grass smells most sweet. On upland slopes at dawn, soft furs on horn. As she recites school report, popular mechanics, dissected frogs, the old happiness. A circle of painters and writers of night conversations, earnest leaders, a choral society. Where are they now? Games, horn music, briefcases in street cafes, rain in tram streets, thunder over buds each year. After decay and fire and earth, bullets remain to shine for the dig, while my antlers attract the galaxy. You call me back to die, to be washed, prepared, childhood in your hands, earth woman, vortex of dead regimes, mother. We cannot pass the door, bare shirts, or leave clear water. This one's a very short one. It's, as I said to you, what I've been trying to do is to write a series of responses to people I admire intensely in various arts. And I'm going to read this one to you, and then read another one, so you'll see what I'm up to. It's partly using the ideas in these artists, and partly trying to get a response from myself. This is called A Revolution, 38 for Bela Bartok. It deals with some of the things that were going on when he was in America, actually. And you'll see the stag materials coming again. Even the flame in our oil lamp leapt high. At every beat counterpoint become an inner necessity, and late in the working, when the most wonderful moths, insects, flies, and other arthropods fly into our flat, quite unknown to me. This is another continent. G sharp and A as a second we know is blood. Who depends on whom for a living, once penetrated into you? eye and ear, the stag cannot return from clear water. After the bridge, your skin changes. The melody continually shapes leaves, flowers, leaves and roots singing onward, a magic horalunga. Hunter into hunted, and the deer is freed, gun and father left before the bridge, freed into forest shadows played upon their fear, valleys without lanterns, resilience of leaf mould, spread of arterial horns, above door height, raised thorns of fire to pathless winds. I'll read the other one. I mean, I've read this. This is an unpublished work in this series of elegies. This one is dedicated to the wife of the chap that designed the cover here of 922 Earth Raids, and the homage to brought this book in, Lisa Donnelly, who was a Spanish girl, exiled from Barcelona, who was once a student of mine, and she and her husband have been very great friends of mine for a long time now. So naturally, I was dedicating this one to her because it is for Lorca. Elegy number 10. Judge and civil guard have thrust a stiff flag into the moon. Winds, drums, high plains form one explosion and another. Every tale we tell is danger to judge and civil guard. They are television poets, poets of the press. The slippery blood gives tongue a dumb and snaky song. Juan Antonio rolls down the canyon, bright from rivals and soldiers. Police and owners of plant lies green in moonlight. Drums of engines, drums of lockstep, icicle in the heart. By permission under guard, boys roam the city, imitate movies, echo verbal lynchmen, blood by London railings. Judge and civil guard smile, for no charge is needed against the black in Ralph Road. A hammered door forms in mountain moonlight. Nuns prod the slit in Christ's side. Useless lips in a Hammer movie. Sharp cries behind closed doors. The moon crackles in heat-soaked sky. Distant war of high villages, of trout and leather holster laid aside for her shining thighs, when perfect understanding has made the mind discreet. Green swords of iris copper her solitudes of love, one after the other, cocks pricking the night, margined in the moon in Arabic, a boy trussed by the civil guard, broken in half like a wand. Only boats flow to the vanishing horizon, from peace of axe, ankle deep, the endless anvil in high long night. Old candles relit in churches, whose roofs are terraces of weed and web, nothing to loot for the patent leather, guard, system of holster, and priest move in their skulls, bloodline capes in November wind. A fight to death at Well's edge, a blood angel neither rises nor descends, snakes in across country, country music, that footbeat to bio, tune still surface, water down to ever still. Clouds pass your head, west, east on the blaze, wind above darkness, a well for baptism into other risks, another syntax. For now, giant leaves to darker still thrash a walled court. Stream rises from them, splashed in fury of that singleness. The guard barks, the moon hides, thorns rape high plateau. Your wind erodes nerves off your legs. Stood at the well, palm open, for a nail of words. A song enters flesh and goes on, through nerve, into the earth. This is rather a quieter poem. Glad to hear. And against all of these, this is before David Jones, and I read a book. There it is, called Local Movement, in which what I was trying to do was to say, what does the word heart mean? Because everybody uses it as a metaphor, and we know it's a thing that goes pumping here. And it was anatomized by William Harvey. So what I did in that book was to say, okay, what is the history of the heart? And then link it with one of the greatest myths of love that we know, that is the story of Tristan and Isolde. And the thing was fused. That was the idea of the book. Whether it comes off in another matter. So this is a kind of sort of an adjustment of some of the things. I'm a bit older than I wrote that book. And there's a marvellous painting by David Jones of Tristan and Isolde, ecstatically enraptured in love in the middle of the boat, just as it nears the coast of Britain. The King Mark awaits, remember the story. So part of that is there, but also I love the way Jones organizes all the elements he's putting together so that they form a kind of series of depths like this, one behind the other, so as if you're looking through time and space. Which I admire intensely. Elegy 7, David Jones. Layer under lens, in case after case, vision from the welding, an event refracts. Entwined in her hair, Tristan, as she raises her green gown up over her lady crotch. Hands leap from the deck, the sword giant between their nearing thighs. They stand swayed amidships. Aquatic courtship to marked horns, strands of stems in water, water to bowls which hold talks and milk. Struggles of tendrils, her cheeks line is a line and the edge of a mane, her hair wind, her arm a candle branch. A bracelet in forest wind, their coast nears their song. Below decks, Brangaina's cry, silenced by wind and their laced body. Love's no choice matter. A horse herd charges through the wood, parts his discarded clothes. Their manes separate. A briar flourishes from the floor. Not to live is not a choice. A recession in the delta. How can they tell each other? A latch, a crossbow across trails of flowers. In black wind, the frail colours, their petals, all stems, less leaves, the fascination of the slender. A cup placed on a flat top claims stalks like a mouth. At the slight spoke of dawn, the manic twine of bird throats, their provocations are not songs, helpless as crystals to reform. Beyond each frame, screens, gauges, hold, designed from nature, one after another, they melt ply after ply into an origin. Our mouths, the tongues, words of the screen's design. A debris of field and wood entangles 3 goblets, the amazing cannibal vine. He places like a hand, and it feels for us. Chains of creeper crawl against latch and frame as the mariner prevents marriage. With rich narrative, old and manipulated, his mad hands on the youth's arm. The choice cannot be made twice. A pot open, a shot fired, a latch unhold, a mark placed. Now attention opens, a sign of memory, or memory, rain into a mold of leaves, a pause of concentration, a dust of gold directed to her crotch. What the lead eye takes as crossroads as a leading mark, is a landing, clearing, a cleansing, a taking off in power. Each nerve draws to a door through the tangle. These illuminations speak of rocking in the tracery. The first door opens once only. Lie still, the animals move round you. Hang overhead, a catkin swings, a pollen censer near a red tassel. A leaf moves, a web shines, a grey squirrel holds a hazel kernel to its mouth. Hand to mouth, the blackbird scuttles and turns a yellow eye to us. Then it is center, time to move. Into a door of explanation, a cave into a mountain, a tomb, and in that tomb a lamp, a thin light to a passage of explanation, and there below the sea folds, rocks wear, and fossils start to imitate the ammonite. My head is hands and feet, my head is an organ for burrowing. I would mine and burrow my way through these hills. The richest vein is somewhere hereabouts, the divining rod, their rising vapors. In these frames, farewell to witnesses. His voices stay, framed tender gifts, root through our earth, a release of thanks for the joy, the ply. Okay, I'll read one more, and then we'll have a break. This is a little experiment, which is called The Effort, and I don't know whether you can see from there, each of these little segments or cells of the poem is separated by an asterisk. And the idea is that there's a long pause between each thing, and slowly the poem builds up as a space of these cells. Doesn't really matter which order they're read in, by the way, at all. Vis-a-vis what we were talking about earlier. The Effort. It's dedicated to Joel Oppenheimer, an American poet who helped me a lot at one time. I helped him too, when I say. His effort was literary. Mine was, shall we say, medical.
Billy,
The Effort. Those who had made the revolution safe. He had been a rover of the outer seas. He had grown into a stranger, a navigator's foot on a newly discovered shore. The notion of a father was absent. Impressions of endless oceans, an obscure corner out of men's sight. To catch there a seabird with hands had learned at sea not to be surprised. Eyes had seen the atrocious 10 feet away. Nothing went mad, suspended over the ravine of ocean. Only a traitor in white had no gradations. A shadow cast on soils without surprise in various lands. A fear of looking steadily in any direction long. Empty air, some mutilated vision of the dead. Captain Vincent did not mind the moon very much, alert in his movements, nocturnal in his habits. The land does attract. In a long night's sleep, in every corner of the earth, in the very heart of forests, which is an inconceivable thing, figures, stones, sticks. There must be something in the idea. The endangered stability of things. The occasion of that wound, which gave an opportunity to reflect at leisure on the conduct of his own life. A leader, without ever trying for it very much. A brother of the coast. The great oval patch of dark water, a broad blue lane in a parabolic curve. He had seen many abandoned places. Temples never looked quite empty. Circling, a seabird in the dusk, a strain of madness in a miserable cripple, an unaccountable charm of a half-crazed woman. He had lived in his native land like a hunted wild beast. A faculty of accommodating himself to a plank. An old sea dog never loses. A primitive, untroubled by anything as uncertain as intelligence. In the light of the moon, the prawns shone like silver. The sensation of a regained, touched with the far-off days in the Indian Ocean. The sinister solitude in which he kept order under delusion, taciturn and guarded, no intimacies, clear of social connections, sincere lawlessness, refreshing in neither hypocrite nor fool, not in the name of sacred revolutionary principle or for love of humanity. A lofty pinnacle above a noise. lips pressed on lips, without kiss and breathless. A razor blade, one of a set of 12 in a case, Ceylon swelling like a thin blue cloud on the far horizon, left stone. The sun threw a sort of halo around the ship, thunder at sunrise, from one thing to another thoughtlessly, a stretch of mere shells of houses, with cracked walls and broken windows, the first drops of heavy rain striking the ground, the tall rocks streaming with water. A moment of buoyancy in the failing light. The buildings awaited them, lifeless, the days of his manhood, of strength and adventure. The whole of the empty sky in a mighty and commanding shout, steady. In the midst of fields out of reach of the sea, who had died intestate with no discoverable relations. The blue level of the Mediterranean. Thank you very much. Okay. Very nice, I must say. I've got one or two requests to read, so I'm going to start off with those. I think I'll read the comical ones first. One of the things that I'm fascinated by is using another set of terms, another set of another kind of language than my own. That is to move down inside somebody else's terminology, and just see what happens when it's like putting on somebody else's role, somebody else's life, in a sense. And sometimes it can be funny, hopefully, and sometimes it can be a very serious proposition. For instance, recently I was reading Winstanley's documents about the levelers and the diggers, you know, those very early communal Democrats in the 17th century, and using their language and see what happened when I sort of like put it on. That was rather serious for me. These are not so serious at all. I'm going to read 3 of them. What happens is this. In the first one, I'm using language of from the TV guide in America, and my idea was to look at all the descriptions of movies over a period of a week very quickly and just transcribe them. The second one was taking Eric Satie's descriptions of his own works and doing that very quickly. The third one was using the balloons and captions coming out of people's heads in a cartoonist called Crumb, R. Crumb, an American comic book writer who I'm extremely addicted to. And so I read those 3. These are for Lee McCarthy. It's part of a thing called 5 Derivations, and it's in this book called the he expression. So the first one then with this TV guy stuff, it's called Sunday Through Saturday. Sheriff Ben Sadler arrives at Golden Empire Ranch to investigate fatal beating of Mexican laborer, stage-struck prop man, who works with a company of travelling actors, only survivors of atomic war, reviving mankind's ancient hostilities and prejudices. A millionaire named Ezra Ounce wants to spend his money improving other people's morals instead of his relatives who plot to use his money for musical comedy. When the new vet turns out to be Rhonda Fleming. She especially remembers Armand, the charming anarchist whose attentions continued colourfully, whitewashed in this entertaining melodrama of old Missouri as a 70-year-old man who can't convince the police or his family that Atlanta is not the right place for Scarface, a movie star who desperately tries to avoid the draft. Another slapstick carry-on about 2 rival companies, Wells Fargo and Perry Mason. The now classic tale about a fun-loving prostitute and investigator for the World Health Organization. This parody of 1928 Gangland Chicago story of Dr. Mudd, the Maryland physician who set John Wilkes Booth's fractured leg in order to gain military information from the Germans, and begins expanding to alarming proportions, causing death and destructions after he jails the brother of the area's most powerful rancher, Dean Martin, a Union officer imprisoned in Richmond. Downbeat tale of the bond between a priest and a bandit, a sheriff fired by Matt plans revenge. That was funny. Thank you. The next, they should make them large. And these are Eric Satie, the French composer, used to write very strange and funny things about his music. And I thought they were hilarious. And so I pinched some of them and added my own in places. Satie, like cats. What sort of cats? Holotheria creep about on stones, or rock piles, marine animals, sea cucumbers spin a disgusting silk. Light disturbs them. They purr by crustaceans with sessile eyes in cliff-pierced holes, peer at crustaceans who hunt without ceasing, cunning behind their eyes, on mobile stalks, tasty food for men and women who read over Funeral March by Chopin, the celebrated Mazurka of Schubert, and other Gnossian gymnopedic melancholies. Next to Last Thought in a mobile man, points of a high collar and a beard, his eyes pinched, a pince-nez mouth, and 8 Picasso fingers. Oh, Eric, why will you not be serious, as well as sopping wet, and clothed over to cheer up Rosicrucians, ragtime on the outskirts? The last one is taking R. Crumb's balloons and little inscriptions onto his cartoon drawings. It was called Crumb. Corns bunch out to sunset to Afghanistan, except for these guys, whose pants bulge somebody famous. Stuff happens. Fads get started. To find God, he took along a lunch, and we're on the 45th floor. Never mind, try classical phlegm throwing. Minds were made to be blown on WZAP. You never got out of your car. Can't stay away from that desert. It's a little corny, if you ask me. 3 weeks of chastisement are all. Almost get you there stoned. A strange inscription on my hand, only this time it isn't sex. Will Whiteman join the parade? Oh, eventually. On this famous street in Cleveland, click, wait, thanks. You're going to get there anyway. You're always making multi-sensory wisecracks. I'm glad I got over it with. I wish I'd written that. This is the other one. This is the one that Paul asked me to read. It's a bit longer. And it's in a book called Against Tyranny, which is the title, might imply. Is a book of political poems. The origin was, the immediate origin was, that was the origins of goodness knows what for a poem, in one's own, deep inside one's own life. But there's a very famous French writer who was a friend of Jean-Paul Sartre called Paul Nizan, who wrote a marvelous book called Aden Araby. And he was the political man who finally went and lived in Aden for a time, to get out of the French bourgeois setup, and came back. And his father was a railway worker, and there was this tussle between the intellectual, the politically minded son and the working class father, which is inside the poem. This is then for Paul. It's called Life Speed. The son of a traitor suffocates in his dreams. Picks are raised to infinity. Belts convey coal and nuts in arc light. In jokes, intellectuals call themselves proletarian. Hernia in each line. The neo kicks each apprentice into space. Pride sinks into the work. An author fails as a skilled labourer. Whose success stays. A communion of servants without hope, without the party, and a chance of treachery against continual theft. Each man immortal as a worker, his blood sealed as worker fluid, which death deprives at the end of the factory. The unblinded revolutionary holds his own anxiety, not pushed towards massacres. His awakenings anonymous, his death his own. In resistance country, sky and earth surround the target, and the telescopic sight, lies of the party, silence of leaders in obedience. Robbed by distant men, ruled by language, worn out by war and return from war, a loner, lost, trudging in a crowd. When may the charge of treason stop, the manufactured outrage shatter, travel in ruins, west, east, now, then, onward. Terminate and hypocritical mind sees fire, moves at high speeds in sleep and patrol, through colonial museums, the leagues of occasions. Evil is to keep on saying no, to reinforce a total need, to be satisfied in advance, a juicy prison inside an apple of simple conflicts. Hole to hole kissing, dark hills beyond her head, but growing up never ended. Ended in barracks, slave stations, police stations, factory. Powerless liberty abandons poetry for an order to come. The order says, come, the game ends. Sensitives thought inner life instead of dividends. Asia, hero of wisdom. America, hero of power. African trading posts, Pacific refueling bases. Dreams of bleats and archipelagos lapped in blue. Thule, heart of darkness, an earthly paradise. At the void end of breakage, a new robbery begins. Copra and blacks. Underwear, the vestments of well-hung priests. On ruinous cruises under blood-stained sailors. Men with knives wait for their judge. Civilization is target practice. At sea, by train movement, encounters the heart with one appointment to keep, in speed. Disorders have no space. War, commerce, transit, the timeless excuses, domain on passwords and countersigns, illusion of peace. Or maze of prayer. Each man for a right, a daily life of the debris out of time, no familiar faces under revisited trees. Stray bullets, a balding crow, their eyes follow you everywhere as alive paint evacuated children wear regimental colour tags. Ignoble echoes of empire shake their sure vision, a mirage of workers singing at the same work, to driving belts, computer hums, as Mao trades with chilly generals. Waiting for Sunday under group names and nights of leaders, giant portraits of tyrants, memorial exhibitions of dead, mad premises. Joe, Winnie, Musso, and other pet names for their sons. Takes leisure to be a man, is revolution. The rest is world market and vote illusions. Exhaustion consumes love, and I invite my soul. Newsprint consumes sex, art, politics, to cables, to a single sheet of edition waved on as a street rag, with no corrections, nothing to read or see. Filing cabinets of liberation. Sunflower heads turn in brutal suntime, craters of seed, beat in time by priests in police boots, their confusion, screams blotted by wafers. His poetic mistress gags. He boasts of being in a war, even wounded, and semen trickles from what is left of his cortex. Capital flows to insects above ditch meat, hums of position flakes, plane on plane. I was always allowed to believe that men did have substance. Whole universities of Georgics men, craft dreaming craft. Snakes escape into holes, a librarian feels guilt, just, and votes labour against ruin. Ruined subjects in miseries of the Orient, in perpetual vacuity of work and misplaced ardour, or waste of free solitude in broken minerals. A walk on a volcano, or through guano caves of Batu Pahak, echoes swung around a stained Buddha, oil light flickered under wings, guttered under a holy deep stench, old night in a hillside where the dead swallow us and force us to think up angels who break up riots of our dreams. A whole culture dedicated to defeat by games, editorials, serials, nuclear explosion, police judges with their posts and documentary filmers, oriental bankers and billiard Christians who believe souls in inner life or other Eastern trickery of retreat. Errors of youth, answers in growing up, a farce, one-way doors and a blanketed head, rushed from closed car at dawn behind the court. What voyages of salvation! Gardenias drift on the wind, strange figures allure before tanks of sacred turtles. Snow ranges behind forever. Itineraries, maps on faulted parchment. Archipelagos with enough sea to make a realm. But the attack on the sun is universal. Let poetry sink into void. Let lessons from nature sink in nature. Green wheat in sunlight does not save. A convoy of plated lorries dusts the crops. A film of cities rush into the sand, of Lourdes and Mecca, of church and prison, the two most revolting objects on earth. Short chains, long songs across battlements of poverty, hidden prophets, tears of the supertext, incense prayers. The cardinal dies in a brothel, of course. Thrifty love, small enough to possess a poem, thin enough for insect lusts. The body of a man, the head of a dog, the arms of a machine. The shaman tramples men under justice. Dead regulars emerging giggle and dance a bit in chin guards. The soul is rammed into each man for his degradation. Revolution is to tear soul from body, return the graft to the knifer's acolyte, to the dream of angels. Yes.
That's good.
It's bitter, isn't it?
No, sure.
Yes. It is. I was just learning from it. I spent a lot of time in the past living in Malaya, and this is a poem which I read before to some of you, but I like to read because it has a very strict form, which we were talking about earlier, and you see it has a repetitive structure, and that's to try and bring out the rhythm. It's dedicated to a great friend of mine, John Blacking, who is an anthropologist, and has done a great deal for the Malayan peoples in the jungle. There's just one or two words that you might not know. The word Kris, K-R-I-S, is a kind of curved Malayan sword, short sword. And you probably know about running amok. It's a kind of strange psychological madness that takes people in Malaya. The word amok, A-M-O-K, is a Malayan word. And for reasons that are not all clear, they trot mad through the jungle, through the streets, until they finally find the person they have to kill. It's called Turning Point for John Blacking. He is nomad. Life seems long. He edges eternally at the edge of ageless jungle. It is ageless. If early, how early? His ticking stitches paces alike, one square drawn on ground as another. He knows fatigue is useless, harmful. Fish, music in river water. Fruit falls, split husks. As durian ripens, falls around his palm house. He maddens. The shit smell, the sweat-swollen pulp, spike rhymes as battle maces open his brain. He says, we eat rice, but we don't eat the soul of rice. His eyes move from sea to jungle, defenseless as rain breaks at 4:30 daily. He dreams the spectre hunter, thighs and chest grown with moss, and orchids, hounds, poisonous over treetops. His wife yearns still for a male mouse deer with young in his belly pouch, not musk. He turns blind, swarms hatred, frustrated to be whirled into her meshes again. His boundary joyfully slips from sheer and narrow to broad forest water. He is Lata, then breaks imitation, dances from his home, rust on a crest turns red in thirst, such as his wrist. Rice fields answered expectations of his heart, seasoned, intermingled, always budding, dying leaves, pink haze of young shoots. Lovely efflorescences snake a thin cascade of oil. Each turn fresher air, he raises his arms to bamboos, returns origin to its source. Regret and desire is returning angel. Children cry Clough from their games, since foreskin is their pleasure word. His heart sees beyond his eyes, black water edged with silver showers from his shoulders. His Milky Way scattered in the Indian Ocean, rays and polyps. He believes he needs life no longer, become visionary in moonless water. Some fish squeaked when touched, others ballooned or spat, iridescence faded. King crabs raise their edged triangular tails and clatter among flanges and hinges. Warm yellow odor loads these keys, during fleshed almond milk from gourds. He felt a self too secret to emerge, as smell of a man's blood. His muscles received pose into pose of dancer's recovered suppleness. He lived as a man knowing he grows older, rid of childhood, rid of child men. Two-horned Iskandar fills eastward, conquered the whole earth, a legend. Avoiding sunset, an exhausted jungle, flapping tides, sun enemy, the sorcerer's triple shadow infests walls in a house of palms. To take a man alive, long wooden forks grip him to a tree or wall. He watched the shy man of Pantoons locked in desire for ecstasy of defiance. He saw him die blata, sport of tribesmen, prey to suggestion. He watched revolt from enslaved humiliation turn to hunt. I stepped into other men's adventures till they came my own. Embedded, raised ghosts shake my heart. 'Tis not a dream, my grip on that weapon. Rustle of film, twist under my feet. No memory raises clear layers. He quivers under counterpoint. He saw blue shadows of giant hibiscus on raw hot sand, their drying nets. He sank in mystic abdication, lata against invasion of the snatchers. He smelled coconut, almond, frangipani as skin neared the blade.
Yeah.
And I mentioned my very great love of the music of Weber. I'm sure a lot of you share. And here's a poem in a book called 1922 Earthquake. It came out the other day. This is elegy number 5. And it's headed by a passage from a letter that uses various references to his life and music and his sense of his music being very close to nature. A perfect knowledge of the mines, cutting ore and small springs and anacrusis, intelligible, untranslatable. A shine in the attempt to multiply originalities. As a 3-hour ascent and descent of a life's work drops in silence, pulsing, floats with devour in Caribbean time, against tyrannical principle. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master, except as mastery arising in absorbed gaze to medieval strata, through silences and Antillean syncopation, remote colorations in new registers, for winds on another planet, for particle movements of muscle, the turn of acids magnified, in canon, levels of pitch, time, distance, whose reversible accuracies move time in 4 directions, leaving symmetry in jungles of rule. A variation rises as a brittle rocket, or pleasures of Chinese unpacking, in perpetual metamorphosis. The theme itself is already nothing, but variations. It is 1940, vanishing into changing centres of gravity. His hurried, curious travels to high mountains. In one place, local structures of intricate symmetry. Intimate symmetry dissolves to the west, arises in a new west, the high hills. Thunder heartbeat kindles in a word storm cloud, fragrance of roots. Above, silent wings. Sun god is their shape in the words. Earlier names gathered and lost in weaker words, killed by word strength. Height rises in darkness, dew on perfection. Can the musician play and we hear? What is our surrender? Struggle towards veracity. His necessity, it is not beautiful. No acts of freedom in Salzburg, Linz, Vienna, or Paris. But a style of facts, self-evident. reassured in 7 notes, their intervals, a field of wild history. Under a master who played, I run with my head against the wall, but it is the wall which will crack. The last rooms of Burg 31 overlooked frost fields, the graded slopes, in deep summer the relief of snow. He drew geometry with pencil and compass to hear work in his ear. A bare table. The sound is always there. Lichens on stones. The chord design. Mittersill below Hohen Tauern. An hour of radiant snow. The early sky. Mono. Above his Friede auf Erden, my friends. Deep valleys, mysterious plants, mountain pines, in my nature, my lexicon of botany for miracles, in the physical wintergreen, a scent like balsam. Where horizon no longer exists, against pine and an interval, is measure, and exists at time distance, our threat given freedom. Once time is ordered, nothing can be said. The center is interval, an honest seed, a silence rhythmic with sound. The result of composed assent in interval. Eyes on a new encounter, fern, orchis, or rub geology, is prison, economic sacrifice within assent until interval. Ascends to such space as all elements move in broken fundamentals, in great shapes descend, songs go out to a rising number, imaginary elements deep, or is it far, not up but in, not down but penetrative, a return neither prison nor composition. Origin is origin, Orphic pit, mountain organ, when nerve rises, wild marjoram, oreganum pride, oros the mountain, os the mouth, garnos the brightness of joy, oriens the rising sun, the invention of infinite plants. Yeah. How's the time getting on that? No, I'm going to read some unpublished thing. I told Jeff about this one. He was very annoyed, but I'm afraid I want to read it whether he's here. I'm going to read 2 poems to end with. One is a long one, and then I'll read a little short one to finish it off. This is the long one. Some of you may know a poet called Colin Sims. He lives in York, and he's a naturalist. And he wrote a marvellous book called Lives of British Lizards, which I just devoured. It was one of the most interesting books I've ever read. I don't know nothing about lizards at all. But, one feels one does now. He's also a poet I particularly admire for what he tries to do. But also, this poem is another one of my elegy things, that is celebrations of people, and it's a celebration of the great Italian communist writer Gramsci, communist leader Gramsci. But what I'm trying to do, and I'm saying this, I don't think it's a good thing to explain what you're doing, but it is a rather long and complicated poem. What I'm trying to do I was thinking about Gramsci's long years in prison where he wrote after he'd been organising strikes and so on in Turin. And what we have, of course, is those writings and his prison notebooks and all things in there. And it was the double of Colin's patience watching lizards endlessly, day after day after day, and Gramsci's patience in prison writing with this little precise crabbed hand he had. And I thought, well, that's the way to do it. One of the ways you have to do it. You've got to have patience and wait and watch. So this is Elegy 9, Gramsci for Colin Sims. It's in little pairs of lines to make it go slow. Dream back to a time when punctuality was new. as Eastern men came on time, apologized to embroidered virgins. Linnaean men, slow hours to enliven the world at our feet. Minute but graphic particulars gathered under attention watching. Words increased the pace of tales from the undergrowth, the regrown tails of lizards, incomplete and missing the grace, while those who did not need to escape, sunshine warms their plated sheaths. Cactus and lizard in sand soils recall the last to go, the bone. The first there flickered across still cooling pumice. Tales of old Lars lizards, children pore over, quiet with their beasts. Hearing night crickets in grassy subsoil. Shah wrote, prenatal life must have been sweet, since nature is invisible. Even where lacunae are filled patiently, a gentle step, an eye learned against civilized eyesight. We await sickness and hope for courage, regular patrol of the lizard ground. The tools of lizard investigation include a mild sedative, the dark interior of a light-reflecting cloth bag. But Gramsci's precise hand wrote, manure for manure, as well draw back, return to the shadows into obscurity. From prison and investigation, no eagle but Prometheus devoured by parasites. Killed by luck with medical attention, by brutal supervision to multiple illness. Arteriosclerosis, tuberculosis of the back and lung, angina, gastric disorders. The focus to my inner life, cell writings. 2, he says, in De Natura, we can still find Racosi's discovery, a spirit in the body of the seed whose nature answereth in proportion to the element of the stars. Details of armour changed to make room for developments within. A view planted forever and reinforced from childhood. That form is danger or touchable. A most successful branch of living with niches inside dominance and basking to recharge. Snout first in early sun facing east, before a possible deliberate fracture called autonomy. How do you know removal of toes and cut nerves did not disease or inconvenience? Pain is not visible, and the young come wrapped or not. They lay eggs or produce young already active. Forgotten troglodytes in translucent moss forest apply to the sun as sad dunes sing. Old vegetation rustles with shrews, toads, insects at the edge of settlement, our rubbish facing upward, building nests, keeping competitors from its patch, food finding. This is replaced by a short vision at low level. A forked tongue places scents on the mouth roof, returns to base by roots to bask and digest. The emaciated lie out on pioneer roots, unable to get up, twin penises, one at a time. A naturalist lives a life of allegory, cryptic colouring. His warm shoe shimmers for a lizard. All their fights are male puffs and arching. A naturalist is free to write the most beautiful metallic morsels of life I know, of young slowworms, and watch a head close to a drop. In Yorkshire, fog, tongue in and out, takes in rain from the grass blade. Flaunt of the sunshine, I need not go bask. Lie over, you light surfaces only. Whitman forced the surfaces and the depths, asked the earth what it wanted. A naturalist asks for an honest praxis, cheap food and clothing. And John Clare refuses second-hand quality that comes from expressing emotion directly. Each lacertid can be watched. To give up your shadow, your commentator. The watcher fades, fixed and hold our mist after dawn. This slow worm's muscles draw across my lower arm and retract into the rustle, unfollowed. The lizard gets you nowhere. But here is a space to untie deception, to stop attainment. A marriage, alone, endless, with no point in this detritus of poems. Stillness of a busker, sun on his perfect line, any position is a dance. You can move in, feel nerve awaken, the first step, spots of preservation, a Yorkshire stone heap overgrown with nettles and ground ivy, a south-facing limestone sward with orchids, a 2-acre patch of ill-drained soils of the Yorkshire morainic ridge, a caravan park in Anglesey. Moments of structure, where totality appears as a thing without men, a network of oppositions, a bird alights, a naturalist classifies its head, grubs twitch around the beak. Even cold societies have a history. I do not see man only workers and naturalists, who speak language through their works and days, graphic particulars, incomplete, sun on your neck, muscles around spine, from nape to waist. Their history is large to the slow one, a rational disorder out of past swamps. His grass and dune hold a slow writhing order. Our disorder creates as a naturalist watches, lying in countryside most of a lifetime. A classifying masochist with his own name. The moon brought air raids, and its shining was discouraged. Nightingale gave distance to dripping woods. Night gave eternity and infinite in firmament. For 20 years, we must stop this brain, the public prosecutor points to 11 years of patience, watching books, light on strikes and speeches, and precise hand, notating idiocy and power, backward intelligence in the centre, refusing privilege from prosecution, without teeth, digestive system, a failure in sleep, beating headaches against the same walls, obsessed. I ought to do something for Ewig. Carved under a prison file, he speaks to us of dominance, the English phenomenon, traditional intellectuals, landowning aristocracy, industrialists, plated as harmless lassatives. A man eats himself in a state of nature. A man's diet of place is a joke that kills. And last poem I'm going to read is a poem which is a kind of little thing that I think Alan Fisher, I hope, might enjoy. It's called The Art of Fugue, Spring. Because he wrote a poem called The Art of Flight, which arose, I think, from our mutual interest in Bach's Art of Fugue. So I've put it back where it belongs, as it were. Alan knows me well enough to know what I read by that. And we're both fascinated by fugues and counterpoint and what happens when you set up an action. And I thought, well, okay, how can I handle this one? And try and say something other than what Alan said. The Art of Fugue, Spring. Each registration has found other separate events to suspend in space, full and imagined, packed, contra punctus. The disc itself, so slight. Some are totally invertible, no true versions keep singing in the centre. The completion conjectural, after entry upon entry, hangs on air current, stable as a silk sheath, near articulates a body until death plants it. Simply, we can come to this place, just above the earth, float, flower notes stemmed in water, meadows, a range of colour, born of that soil, that flower, periodical. Home is open to sails, lemon and navy blue, shuttle across a rough, dinted creek. The murmured control of stones laid on pools, and access just beyond sweet straw. Wind flaps up pads, ancient carp brush by stems of peach lilies, katsura, flat stones laid across gravel. Without pressure, a floated palace, notes in many places, without rarity, not littered beauty spots. But where the reverberation figure roughens an effect of weather in wood and metal, the fingers or lips to a fipple, warm or hardened from fear, of love, of poverty, of turning round. A buoyancy performance should be temporary. In the Place de la Cathédrale, a fountain, a machine, remote from mountain, Helicon's ghost, as gravity centers shift. The work thrusts from undertow, rough surface, a vertical through each boat's center, sails into wind as it veers even, defines speed of buoyancy. A law places each register for an envelope, a rate of initiation, decay, flight across tidewater. Sea, used and remains, a construction balanced, primordial and novel. After intangible wandering overseas, sufferance and night radar watches, an adequate gait through to counter point one flight after another, a lifetime separate rhythmic. Decay of a gardener, but who leaves him there? Obtains abundant, reverted blooms, water fades, fixed and whole.